Got it. Got it. We are live on the air on WPAT 930 AM with the Christian Fellowship Council. And welcome everybody. Boy, 35 million people, million households out there. We're excited to have you. We're excited. Please join us on our website page, on our YouTube page. You can search for Christian Fellowship Counselor Willie Saunders there. Please find our YouTube and like and subscribe. We got to get to 100 subscribers before we can name our channel. So we're looking forward to do that. Subscribe it. But please join us at cfcpage.com, cfcpage.com. Like us there. Click on donate so we can stay on the air. And if you have an interesting story, if you have something you think the world needs to know, and it's relatively significant, we want to have you on the air. We've had a lot of very important people on the air. We have governors on here. We've had heads of organizations. We've had people in the news, national. So we've had Dinesh D'Souza on the phone, so on the air with us. So we're so excited about that. But today I want to show you who we're having on the air. I want to share with you that we have a person by the name of Kent Heckenlively. That's by the way, that's us live on. We have Kent Heckenlively. There we are right there. But I want to talk about him briefly before we have pre-recorded today's interview. So we had to do it this morning. So because of schedules, but that's okay. We're going to get to him very shortly. But here's one of the many books he's written. I think he's written about 10 or 11 books. This book is not coming out until pre-order until December. But this is or was CNN, How Sex, Lies, and Spies, I like the way that rhymes, Sex, Lies, and Spies undid the world's worst news network. You know, in the 90s, I was featured on Lou Dobbs' show when I was working for Verizon. So I was on CNN way back in the good old days. It talks about an insider who worked at the CNN and revealed what it was like to be there and see the unbelievable bias that was going on during the time that he worked there. So go to Amazon. This was CNN, How Sex, Lies, and Spies undid the world's worst network. So we'll be happy to see that. So today, again, we have Kent Heckenlively. He is the most canceled person on the internet. That's what he calls himself. He calls himself the Voldemort. I love that. The Voldemort of the literary world. Why? Because when people interview him, they say, well, we will interview you, but you can't tell your name. We can't tell the name of your book or any of your books or your website, but we can talk about you. And it's almost silliness. So anyway, we're going to go live now with Kent Heckenlively. Very excited, and here we go. Well, hello, Kent. We're here live with Dr. Ben Johnson and Kent Heckenlively. What did you think of that introduction, Kent?
I thought that was great.
Yes, I love it. The most canceled man on the internet, the Voldemort of the literary world. Now, what does that mean? You're the most hated man in the literary world? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, I call myself the Voldemort of the literary world because in May of 2020, after my book with Dr. Judy Mikovits, Plague of Corruption, came out, Chuck Todd of Meet the Press devoted 5 minutes on his Sunday show to talking about the creation of new conspiracy theories. And so what he did was he talked about this book that was a #1 Amazon bestseller, was on the New York Times bestseller list. And it was also, there was a video that was released with it as well. And It was this amazing marketing plan. And in the entire 5-minute segment, Chuck Todd never mentioned the name of our book or the names of the authors, me and Dr. Judy Mikovits, who's a 20-year government scientist. And so I thought, this is really funny. How can it be that Chuck Todd will attack me for 5 straight minutes on Meet the Press and not even mention my name or the title of my book? And I thought, well, that's Voldemort. That's he who must not be named. So
Yeah.
I figured Chuck Todd has turned me into Voldemort.
Well, we know why he did that, because he didn't want anybody going to your website and buying your books.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm thinking the viewers must be so damned confused out there going, who the Heckenlively is this guy?
Heckenlively. I love the name.
Yeah, me too. Heckenlively.
So here's some background. You were on the screen. You're an attorney. Wow, that's interesting. Science teacher, 2-time New York bestseller, author of The Plague. That was a TV show, wasn't that? The Plague?
No, that wasn't. This is, I've done 4 books with Dr. Judy Mikovits, Plague of Corruption, Ending Plague. We've also done a book on masks.
Wait, I got to tell you that this sounds like a Broadway musical. The Plague, the end of the Plague of Corruption. We got to write a song for this. I love it.
Yeah, you know, it's all about doing the series, right?
Right.
And in our 3rd book, Ending Plague, we were joined by Dr. Frank Russetti, who is actually a 38-year employee of the National Cancer Institute. He won the Distinguished Service Award from the National Institutes of Health. He's one of the founding fathers of retrovirology. And we were also joined in that book by Dr. Luc Montagnier, who has the Nobel Prize for HIV. And after reading our 2 previous books, which he endorsed, Dr. Montagnier essentially demanded to be included in our 3rd book. And I was happy to do that. And some of your viewers may know that he was quite a fighter for scientific integrity, and he recently passed away. So it was very sad, but I was happy that before his life ended, he was able to join our struggle and have his story told again to an American audience.
So I see 3 names of books. What's the 4th one? I don't see a 4th one listed.
I did the Truth About Masks with Dr. Judy Mikovits as well. And, you know, that's kind of an interesting story, going back again to how I'm the most canceled man on the internet. So we originally wrote the book, The Case Against Masks. It was published in August of 2020. And what happened was, after being sold for approximately 2 to 3 weeks, on Amazon, Amazon delisted it from Amazon, and you couldn't get it except on some other websites.
Canceled. You were canceled.
I was canceled. Yeah. So, but the funniest thing is, about 2 to 3 months later, my publisher came back to me and he said, Kent, you know, I think that we might be able to get Amazon to take the book again if we change the title. And so I said, okay, Tony, what's the title going to be? He says, it's going to be The Truth About Masks. I'm like, okay, fine, go ahead. So it is now re-released as The Truth About Masks. The original title had the Statue of Liberty with a mask over her face, cartoon by Ben Garrison, the very provocative cartoonist who's become a good friend of mine. So we now have a boring black cover, and Truth About Masks. And, you know, I just don't quite understand it, why the case against masks must be banned, but the truth about masks is allowed when the content is exactly the same.
Hey, Ben, I think you had a question. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. I wanted to find out about the information within that the books that you have, and the information is, you know, about the masses. The system of the government don't want you to go against what they're trying to promote. So I just wanted to ask about the book. Get more in depth in that, please.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your question.
The book, The Plague. you had. Okay, I just want you to talk a little bit more. What's the insight and what's the depth of that book that I wanted to.
Certainly. So what's really interesting is, and this is something that I really hope that your listeners understand, is I feel like when I tackle a book, I'm looking for a different angle to the story. Okay. So this may sound like a roundabout way of coming to it, but in 2009, Dr. Judy Mikovits published an article in the journal Science, which is the world's #1, journal for original research. She was joined in that article by scientists from the National Cancer Institute and the Cleveland Clinic. And what they were looking at is they were looking at the question of chronic fatigue syndrome, okay? So many people may know about chronic fatigue syndrome, called yuppie flu. It appeared in the 1980s alongside the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And for many people, it was something of a phantom illness, meaning that it was something that was not acknowledged by the medical industry. And so what her research showed, and this, I don't want to get too technical, but let me just say it this way. HIV is a retrovirus, okay? A retrovirus has many different characteristics, one of which is it's often difficult to detect, because what you have to do is you have to, you try to find antibodies to it. It hides in the cells. It's not like a regular virus. So retrovirus detection is very difficult, okay? So what she did with these women, primarily women, okay? So one of the things that happened with chronic fatigue syndrome is very early on, it was said to be a disease that affected career women, okay? And so kind of the sexist thing narrative that developed was that these career women were, charging into these corporations, working 70 to 80 hours a week. And because they were women, they just kind of fell apart. And so it wasn't a real disease. And so what she did was given her background in HIV, because that's where she really made her reputation, is she said, well, if this is a retrovirus, it's probably hiding in the tissues, and if you just take one blood sample, you may not find the presence of the virus. What you need to do is you need to monitor these people over several months. So let's just say every month you have these people come in. Also, the people who are relatively well their immune system would probably suppress it in the blood, but it's in the tissues. And so she's basically said two things. Give me the sickest population, meaning those people with chronic fatigue syndrome who are stuck in their bedrooms 23 hours a day, curtains drawn, they're in significant pain. And also, let's monitor them over several weeks, okay? So, or several months. So basically once a month, come in, get tested and everything. And so what she found was in a cohort was approximately 68% of these women with chronic fatigue syndrome, and some men, they showed evidence of this retrovirus called XMRV, okay? So it was a mouse virus which had jumped into human beings. And so, it was like a wonderful complement to HIV, right? HIV is a monkey virus, a chimpanzee virus, most likely, that jumped into human beings. Now we've got a mouse virus that jumped into human beings. Well, a lot of uncomfortable questions were raised by her research. She ended up getting arrested, even though her article was not only published in the journal Science with scientists from the National Cancer Institute and the Cleveland Clinic, but her research prior to publication had been the subject of an all-day conference at the NIH, which was an invitation-only thing, to really vet the research. But it raised a lot of uncomfortable questions. We published that book in 2013. It really seemed, and what's kind of interesting and why this is all blown up is the person who really, apparently shut down her research was Tony Fauci. So here in 2013, we're saying all these terrible things about Tony Fauci. And, the book achieved some success, but not great success. But then we did our second book, Plague of Corruption, which came out in the midst of the pandemic. And suddenly a lot of people called it prophetic, because what they said is we were giving sort of the game plan away of these public health officials when there were inconvenient truths that they didn't want to, address. And so the response was a massive attack upon us. My book was, our book was on the New York Times bestseller list for 6 weeks. But I think if we had actually gotten a genuine hearing and people had attacked the substance of what we said, which was, how are these animal viruses getting into human beings, then I think the conversation would have been much, much richer, much deeper. And here I am. I'm an attorney I'm working with top scientists, and we get viciously attacked, but they're not going after the substance of what we're saying.
All right, Ken. All of that was totally over my head. I have no idea what you said, but maybe Ben, did you follow that? Because I'm not that smart. I'm not a doctor.
I kind of followed that. He's saying that they're coming up with a script, and they had a plan about certain things that they were going to implement in the world, and they kind of blew the whistle on the process of it. And now they're debating, how is all this stuff a monkey or what you call it, a rat, whatever. How did it get inside a human being? That's why I wanted to ask them about COVID-19. How is that you guys tackle that situation as far as the overall process of how is something else going on with that, as far as the script of what the scientists or Fauci is doing?
With my background as an attorney, what attorneys do is they come up with a narrative. You've got the narrative of your client, you've got the narrative of the other side. Okay. And you may not know which one is true. I mean, your client may seem like a good guy and everything, but at least get the story right. And so I think what happened with COVID-19, and this is something that was not in our second book, but everybody latched onto it, was I'm very comfortable talking about both narratives, the narrative of the government and the narrative of, people who attack that. And I'll tell you which one I believe, but, I want to be fair and everything. And quite honestly, I don't know the truth. I have my suspicions, but, the thing that struck me about COVID-19 when it came out is very early on, there were only two choices that they were giving us. One, it was a bioweapon that escaped, or it was of natural origin. And I thought, why are we only being given two choices? Because one of those.
What's the possible other choice? I don't know of any other choice that's possible.
The third choice is an accidental escape of something that they were working on, not that it was some bioweapon attack. And I thought, why are we not talking about the viral research that's done in the labs that scientists for many years have been very concerned about? And the narrative was not like, okay, did somebody make a mistake? No, it was this an attack, or is this natural?
Well, or was it a plan way back when to help with the election?
Yeah.
Election of who? You mean Trump? Who lost?
No. So listen.
And where I think I differ maybe with a lot of people, and some may not understand this, is, I'm not necessarily saying there are, these evil geniuses trying to do all these things. I'm just saying there may be people who do stupid things. They make terrible mistakes and then they try to cover it up. And so I'm much more a believer in the confederacy of dunces rather than in the confederacy of villains.
So can I add?
I want to jump to the behind the mask. That's one of the reasons we got that. Ben, is it a quick question before we jump to that?
Yeah, I mean, the quick question is that then they said that they bought into Fauci and them are invested in this particular serum that they have and things. So to me, if it was, it seemed like it was kind of set up. If that was the case, that people invested in that particular serum, not sermon, but serum. And then I look at that, and a lot of people said that he got rich off it. So I just don't know if it was set up that way in a way.
It's a wonderful question, Ben, and that's what I always say is, I kind of avoid, trying to figure out what the plans of people, claiming I know what's going on in the minds of these people. So I can tell you that the available evidence supports the narrative that this was a plan all along.
Yes.
The information also supports a narrative that a whole bunch of crappy, stupid, unexpected accidents happened. And the people who were responsible for those crappy, stupid accidents wanted to cover it up, and it would look exactly the same as if they planned it.
Good point.
Good point. Very good point.
So we don't know. We shouldn't guess. That's basically it. This thing happened, but as far as we know, it came out of a facility. It was not from an animal. That's what you're saying, right? As far as we know.
Yeah. It originally from an animal, but how is it that animal was located, 1,000 to 800 miles away from where the outbreak happened?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the mask behind Facebook. Ben and I were on the interview with Dinesh D'Souza just earlier this week or last week, and he also talked about Facebook and how they actually funded the drop boxes, which we never knew. But tell me about this book.
Yeah, Behind the Mask of Facebook. What I've done is, since my success with the books with Dr. Judy Mikovits, I've kind of become the unofficial biographer of the Project Veritas whistleblowers.
Whoa, wait, that's fantastic. And you got to get them on the air with us, by the way.
Yeah. And so I did a book with Zach Voorhees, who's a Google whistleblower, Google Leaks. And then I got approached by Ryan Hartwig. And so Ryan's story is fascinating. And it's just like regular guys who find themselves in situations in which they have to make a moral choice. And so Ryan was hired as a content moderator by Cognizant, which was under contract with Facebook. And, Ryan, I just love this guy. He is like your squeaky clean Mormon guy. Okay. And so what he really wants to do is he wants to be like a great content moderator at Facebook. And when he was originally hired, he was hired as a content moderator for the Latin American Facebook division because he speaks kind of flawless Spanish. And so at the time he was hired, the mission of Facebook and the Latin American group was that the cartels were using Facebook as a way to terrify local populations. So
really, in the United States?
In Mexico.
Okay.
So basically, what would happen is, these cartel members would do things like they would capture some Mexican police, and they would film the execution of these policemen who are, standing in their own graves, and then broadcast that to the world as a way to terrify. Also terrible violence, torture that they would show. And so, it's kind of a righteous mission, right? Let's keep that stuff off the internet. Let's keep, graphic pornography. Let's keep child porn off of it. There were some kind of funny things in terms of you know, Latin American slurs. And, you know, you can say like, okay, I kind of get this. And, you know, you kind of got the sense that Facebook was building the airplane as they were flying it when it came to content moderation. But what he observed was sort of a leftward drift. And I'll explain this to you. So Facebook had this policy that you couldn't call anybody filth, okay? That, you know, that was just an unacceptable word to use about any human being, right? And so you go, okay, I got that. And then comes Gay Pride Month, okay? And so some people who are supportive of Gay Pride Month started saying that calling straight white males who didn't agree with every part of their agenda filth. And so then Facebook started saying, oh, well, during Gay Pride Month, gay people can call straight white males filth. And so it was just example after example of Facebook having a policy. And then when it came time for an exception, they were always granting those exceptions one way.
Wow. So is that what the book is about?
Yeah, so it's his journey. What he ended up doing was he had collected, I think, somewhere around the neighborhood of 18 or 20, like clear examples of Facebook changing their policies to favor the left. He had sent that information to several members of Congress. Nothing happened. He then approached Project Veritas and gave them his information. Then he wore a wire and a camera and recorded many examples of this bias, and it ended up being a huge Project Veritas story, you know, millions of views. And so I think what I like to think of my work with Project Veritas as going, you know, even deeper into the stories that millions of people hear.
Okay, so where could people view that? Is that available on the internet to view that?
So the Project Veritas website has Ryan's story, and then you can pick up Behind the Mask of Facebook. You know, any place books are sold on the internet. That one hasn't been banned.
Ben, you had a question.
Yes, I just want to know which one was the most grievous story that you know of that they tried to utilize, that he, you know, the content wasn't correct in a way where he was saying one thing but he allowing another thing to take place.
Well, you know, I think it's pretty grievous to, you know, call anybody filth, you know, especially when you have a policy that is, we're not going to call anybody filth. There are a couple other examples that I found humorous. So one of the things that I found kind of humorous was that Facebook had a no nudity policy. Okay, so you couldn't show a woman's exposed breast. Okay, and then during Gay Pride Month, a bunch of lesbians want to march with the topless, and Facebook says, "Oh, we'll allow that. That's political speech." And you know, I'm a man. I enjoy a woman's breast as much as anyone.
Hey,
so, you know,
political nudity is okay. As long as it's political, it's okay.
It's not nudity, it's political, guys. So, you know, it's kind of funny. You know, there were some other examples that I think were quite egregious. So there were some videos of young men who were wearing Trump hats, who were at restaurants and then were accosted by other people and, you know, having drinks poured over their head. And, you know, Facebook banned those videos, and you know, on the claim that it was showing violence against young people. And it's like, no, you talk about bullying, you do all these sorts of things. So they wanted to change that narrative. You know, the other thing is that what Ryan was also seeing was lots of banning of materials of foreign political groups who were using Facebook in their own country. And so there's a question of granted what Dinesh D'Souza has talked to you about in terms of Facebook spending hundreds of millions of dollars in our own election, I think that behind the mask of Facebook tells you a lot of what led up to that, how they were consistently blocking the accounts of conservatives in other countries, Bolsonaro in Brazil. So, and it's fascinating because nobody gets up in the morning and thinks that they're going to be a villain, right? We all want to think that we're doing the right thing, and so I am very aware of the fact that these people that I'm talking about, in their own minds, they are doing righteous things, and so but what I really want to do is
well,
hold
Ken,
up.
we know that maybe Twitter's changing. Okay, there's we have the new owner of Twitter. God bless him. It seems it's going to be more open. He says it's going to be more open. I hope it does happen. We'll see. Time will tell. We know that certain people have already been canceled. They got on and they were on for an hour and they got canceled immediately since Elon Musk purchased them. So we'll see if that changes. Do you see any changes with Facebook? What has been the result of this book, The Mask Behind Facebook?
I've gotten absolutely no changes that I have seen. And it kind of makes me mad because, you can have the Facebook whistleblower come out and she immediately appears in front of Congress and, gets a 60-minute story. And, Ryan, who reveals all this information, is completely, not present in the mainstream media. And so, that's one of the struggles we come across, which is that, the media has basically two ways of attacking inconvenient stories. The first is to viciously attack you, like Chuck Todd did, when they just have no other choice. And the other is to simply pretend that you don't exist. So, my Facebook book and Google leaks, are stories of insiders who, escaped with lots of documents that they have presented to Congress. But one of the problems that we come across, and this is something I say quite clearly, is usually my whistleblowers are not conservative people to begin with. Right now I'm working with another Project Veritas whistleblower, Kerry Porch, on a book about CNN. And, he was a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016. Zach Voorhees of Google Leaks was basically an Occupy Wall Street guy. And so, I try to make my books, accessible to people of all political persuasions and just say, here's the story. For all of the attacks that have been made against me and Dr. Mikovits, you can go, search me out on the entire internet. You will never find me using foul language or attacking my opponents as, terrible people. I'm just saying, let's look at the evidence. Let's look at what people are doing. Let's get people to reconsider.
We're on the air here with Kent Heckenlively. He calls himself the most canceled man on the internet, the Voldemort of the literary world, because he is never named. He's blocked. He's canceled. He's written a number of books. We're talking about a couple of them here. We're talking about the mask behind Facebook and the bias and censorship of that organization. Unfortunately, he's saying he doesn't see anything changing. I want to talk about Google Links. I don't know anything about this book, but I'd be interested in hearing more. Please tell us a bit about Google Leaks.
Yeah, Google Leaks is a fantastic story because my co-author, Zach Voorhees, was an 8-year employee of Google, and he was a senior software engineer. And what was really interesting is that Google used to be what's called an open company. Eric Schmidt, who set it up, thought that any person at Google should be able to look at any other project that people are doing. And so what happened to Zach is, as I say, he basically he was an Occupy Wall Street guy, and he had kind of become disillusioned because he had been in a protest with Occupy Wall Street when kind of the first Antifa people started showing up. And he actually got into a physical confrontation with an Antifa guy in front of the Whole Foods in Oakland, prevented the Antifa guy from breaking the windows of Whole Foods. You know, very scary, creepy stuff. And he had kind of become disillusioned with politics. And so he's working at Google, and then the 2016 election happens, and he goes to that famous meeting where everybody is crying about the fact that Trump won. And Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO, says in this meeting something that catches his attention because he's a software guy. When Pichai is asked by one of the people, was there anything good we did in 2016? And so Sundar Pichai says, well, we did see some really good success with our machine learning program. And so suddenly alarm bells started going off in Zach's brain, because he knew that, machine learning was basically AI, and it was changing the results of things. So he started investigating the programs that Google was putting together, being terrified by them. I think the worst program that he uncovered was something called Purple Rain. Okay. And so, I doing the investigation, I'm like, Purple Rain. Well, there's the Prince song, and you go to the lyrics of the Prince song, and it's all about, the guy telling the stupid, beautiful woman what she should believe. Okay. You want a leader, but you don't know who. And Purple Rain has the ability, within 5 minutes of any story hitting the internet, to start changing the narrative and to start delisting stories. And so what was really interesting, and, like I say, I get into these very controversial issues, but I will tell you, I don't know the truth, but I'll tell you the versions of the truth that exist. So the first time, what is true is the first time that this Purple Rain program was used was at the Las Vegas massacre. Okay. So 2 stories about Las Vegas, right? Okay. One story is that Stephen Paddock, a 64-year-old guy with no history of violence, suddenly decides to commit the greatest mass murder, in American history. Okay. Mass shooting. All right. Okay. That's one version. The other version is that the Saudi crown prince was staying in Las Vegas. He was a subject of an assassination attempt, but unfortunately, Saudi princes who were in Las Vegas have this unfortunate habit of wanting to go out to the casinos. So the crown prince wasn't where he was supposed to be. The assassins came for him. They didn't find him. They needed to try to make him escape. They did a diversion. Okay. I don't know which story is true.
Wait a second. Are you saying that this guy that shot and killed all these people was a diversion orchestrated by a Saudi prince?
No, what I'm saying is, all I'm saying is there are 2 stories.
I don't understand the other story. I can't wrap my mind around it.
So the other story is that Stephen Paddock was not the killer himself. It was these renegade members of Saudi intelligence who were trying to kill the prince, and Stephen Paddock was set up with it. So I don't know.
I don't understand. They're trying to. So these people that work for the renegade people who start shooting Americans. It makes no sense. I don't get it.
So here's the story. So like I say, I don't know which story is true, but here's the other narrative. The other narrative is that Stephen Paddock was working for the U.S. government. They were trying to there was supposedly going to be an Al-Qaeda cell in the United States, which was part of this Saudi security detail protecting the prince. Stephen Paddock was supposed to supply them with weapons, and then the FBI was going to swoop in and arrest them. But it turns out that our own intelligence services were duped by the Saudi intelligence, by elements of Saudi intelligence, because if you read all about the new Saudi crown prince, he really is a reformer. Now, it's been very controversial what's going on, but supposedly the assassins went to where he was. Stephen Paddock was there, but the prince wasn't. They killed Paddock. They shot up people, tried to escape from the hotel, ended up getting killed. I don't know what's true.
No, but who got killed? Stephen Paddock or these?
The assassins themselves got killed as well.
Oh, that was never in the news. It was never news of them being killed. It was only Stephen Paddock.
But what there were in the news was there were stories of other gunmen, other firefights, and it was reported.
All right, let's get to the chase here. Okay, so there's two stories. There's this computer program on the internet that changes the story within 5 minutes. The story is some wackos killing Americans.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, well, it's the crown prince. Some rogue people were killing him, but the American. Why was that? Why did that become a story?
Well, what's interesting is, and so like I say, I don't know what the truth is. I know that there were many accounts. I know that if with the Las Vegas massacre, there were over 400 stories in, top newspapers, looking at various aspects of it, that Google delisted them. And so the question is, does Google now have the ability to shape any story within a couple minutes of it coming onto the internet?
But again, I still don't know why this other story got floated. Why did Google promote that other story? There's got to be a reason for it. I don't understand it.
But Gary,
yeah,
when I look at that, I think it's the content of what they have that they putting out there, Gary. That whoever's in control, who's running everything, they want to give you 2 or 3 analysis of what is current. They really don't never want to tell you the truth about what is really the story, but they can give you 3 or 4 different or 5 different ways to look at it. It's almost like they come in here committing murder, but giving you 10 different or 3 different analyses. So you really don't know. The masses of people really don't know what's really true. And that's a powerful weapon that they have. If they can change, a situation or analysis of what really happened in 5 minutes, they change it to 3 or 4 different narratives. That's a powerful weapon.
It's scary.
That can be used against people. It's scary. It's scary.
But Kent, can you at least guess why they came up with that story? Why didn't they want the real story out there? Can you guess, or you have no idea?
Well, I'll make an informed speculation. If it's true, see, notice how in my story,
move on.
Our own intelligence agencies did quote nothing wrong or heinous. They got taken by some bad elements of Saudi intelligence. How would it look if the FBI or one of our intelligence agencies said, oh yeah, we were trying to capture what we thought was an Al-Qaeda cell in the United States, and we were fooled, and as a result, 58 Americans died and hundreds were injured? That would be a huge scandal.
So in other words, did they create that to make a scandal? Did they make that
Nope.
up?
Nope. They created
that to protection of the American government and the FBI. They protected them from looking a certain way.
They did something stupid. They didn't do anything evil. They were trying to, what they believed, to capture an Al-Qaeda cell in the United States. Like I said, I don't know if that's true, but I know what story got suppressed and what story got boosted. And so this, to me, the story of Stephen Paddock, and this is what I cover in the book, is I said, this story makes no sense. For example, Stephen Paddock, worth several millions of dollars. Okay, and then they say he's a gambler. And this is from the New York Times article itself. Oh, he was a gambler. What kind of gambling did he like? Oh, he would often appear with hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he would do computer gambling, and on the slot machines. It's like, that's not a real gambler. It's like, there are things that make no sense to me about Las Vegas. Like I say, I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that the first time that this purple rain system was deployed was during Las Vegas. And so I simply raise the question. I present interviews with the Saudi Crown Prince where he says very clearly that what has happened in Saudi Arabia for the past 40 years since the Iranian Revolution is not Islam. Saudi Arabia needs to go back to moderate Islam.
So this reminds me of the American embassy story that came out saying, oh, well, there's a video on YouTube and all of a sudden these people shows up at rocket launches in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Now that was not done by the Purple Rain technology, but it was done with the same people who want to change the narrative, come out with a fake story. It hits the news like crazy. It gets changed a few days later, but fewer people see it. We're coming to the end here. I want to show people your website. It's Kent, K-E-N-T, Heckenlively books, that's plural, .com. And let's go here. He has many books. He likes to write, I guess. And I think
my editor has taken to calling me the white tiger, so because I'm the rare writer who actually really likes to write.
And yeah, I just want to know who has the power to make a decision like that. That's what behind all that that's going on like that. Who has the power?
Well, one of the things that,
and we only have like a minute left, so make it quick if you don't mind.
Yeah. So one of the things I get criticized about is, I'm not conspiratorial enough. I just go and I present the evidence and I abundantly document it, and then I invite the reader to come to their own conclusions.
Well, that's interesting. So
yeah,
look,
it is.
Go to KentLivelyBooks.com. The Behind the Mask of Facebook we spoke about today. The Google leaks we spoke about today. We briefly talked about the truth about masks, but we didn't really. We just touched on these other books. There's 9 books here. He is the most canceled man on the internet. That's what he calls himself, or the Voldemort of the literary world, because he is the author who cannot be named. So he was on a major CNN newscast and they were putting him down, but they refused to name his name or the name of the book, which is funny. I want to say thank you, Ken. Ben, a last quick question for Ken before we go.
No, I just want to say, Ken, I appreciate the content of what you're saying and conspiracies. But again, I would love to try to make a decision of who has the kind of ability to do all this and get away with it. That's the next book I want you to write.
All right, we're gonna have you back on.
I do not know the identity of the man behind the curtain.
That's a good book. I like that.
All right, thank you, Ken. We appreciate it, and good day. We'll see you again. Okay, we're back live. That was Kent Heckenlively. Hi, King Melvin. God bless you. How are you? It's always a pleasure. Anthony, please join us, and also Carol, Daryl, Candid Daryl, join us, and Tony Studio, join us. I'm going to turn control over to Anthony as soon as he gets on, and there you go. I understand you guys are ready.